When a man stands in front of the world and loudly declares he is fighting for his marriage, a very obvious, glaring question comes to mind. Who exactly is he fighting? Think about it. There is no rival here. 3 wives have already packed their bags, walked out the door, and completely left the picture. The competition is entirely gone. The cul-de-sac of chaos is a ghost town. So what exactly is Kody Brown fighting against? And more importantly, what does it truly mean that the last woman standing, the one who supposedly won the ultimate prize, needs him to fight at all? Welcome back to Sister Wives Crew, where we dig into the hidden truths and untold stories of reality television's most complicated family. Before we get into the startling details of what is really happening behind closed doors, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an exclusive update. Let's look at where things actually stand today. There is only one legal marriage left in the Brown family. For years, viewers watched as the dynamic shifted, as the original wives slowly realized their worth and stepped away from a situation that no longer served them. Robyn was left as the sole wife, the legal spouse, the supposed center of Kody's universe. You would think this would be their honeymoon phase. You would think that with the other relationships out of the way, they could finally live in that absolute bliss they always hinted was being interrupted by the rest of the family. But instead, this final remaining marriage is publicly unsteady. Social media has been completely buzzing with exclusive theories and deep dives into their recent behavior, and the signs pointing toward an ending are getting impossible to ignore. Fans have noticed a massive shift in how they operate. There is separate language, a separate tone, and completely separate plans. It is like they are living in 2 different realities, trapped in the same house but miles apart emotionally. Rumors suggest that behind the scenes, the tension is suffocating. Reports claim that Kody's constant need for control is clashing with Robyn's realization that she is now the sole target of his frustration. When things go wrong, there is no one else to blame. There is no Christine to point fingers at, no Janelle to argue finances with, and no Mary to string along. It is just the 2 of them, staring at each other, realizing that maybe the problem was never the plural marriage at all. Lock in a prediction right now, because I am about to make you change your mind twice. 1 year from today, are they still legally married? Yes or no? Type it in the comments before you hear the rest of this story. And when this video ends, come back and tell me if I moved you. I want to see how many of you shift your perspective once the full picture is revealed. Let's fast forward to May 7th, 2026. A conversation caught on camera completely shattered the illusion they had been trying to maintain. For months, they had been feeding the public a narrative of unity, a story of survival against all odds. But in this specific exchange, the masks completely slipped. They were forced to confront what the relationship actually is, now that the concept of plural marriage is completely dead and buried. In this raw, unedited moment, Kody looked defeated. He wasn't the energetic, commanding patriarch we met over a decade ago. Rumors suggest that the production crew was entirely silent, as Kody admitted that the foundation of their entire belief system had crumbled. He used words that shocked even the most dedicated fans, openly questioning if their bond was strong enough to survive the vacuum left by the other wives. Robyn's response was even more telling. Instead of offering absolute reassurance, her tone was filled with a strange kind of mourning, not just for the family culture, but seemingly for the version of Kody she thought she had married. Social media sleuths dissected every single frame of this May 7th interaction. It's been said that Robyn's body language was screaming discomfort, pulling away when he leaned in, looking everywhere but directly into his eyes. This is the classic trap moment. They spent years quietly signaling that the other wives were the source of the friction, but now they are caught in a massive contradiction. The credibility dilemma is real. If they are soulmates, why does the sole possession of the prize feel so heavy? Why does it look like they are drowning in each other's presence? Exclusive theories floating around online forums suggest that without the shared enemy of the other wives, Kody and Robyn simply have nothing left to talk about. The dramatic tension that fueled their early romance is gone, replaced by the mundane, crushing reality of a monogamous marriage built on the ruins of 3 other families. The stakes are escalating rapidly. Financial pressures are mounting without the combined income of the larger family structure, and professionally, their brand is deeply tied to a lifestyle they no longer live. Fans are speculating that the only way to keep the cash flowing and the cameras rolling is to manufacture a crisis, to loudly declare they are fighting for a marriage that might already be secretly over. Let's dig deeper into what it actually means when Kody insists he is in a battle for his relationship. When you break down the psychology of his phrasing, it becomes incredibly revealing. The word fight implies an adversary. It implies pushing against a force that is actively trying to tear something down. So if there are no external threats, the threat has to be internal. Reports claim that Kody has become increasingly isolated, retreating into a defensive mindset where he views every single disagreement as a massive betrayal. Fans speculating on the latest social media leaks believe that Robyn is absolutely exhausted by this constant state of war. It has been said that she never wanted to be the only wife. She wanted to be the favored wife. There is a massive psychological difference between those two roles. The favored wife gets all the perks, the extra attention, the secret favoritism, while the other wives carry the emotional and financial load of the family. Being the only wife means she is now entirely responsible for Kody's happiness, his anger, and his massive ego. That is an impossible burden for one person to carry, especially when that person is dealing with the fallout of a completely fractured family. As we move closer to the shocking revelations that unfolded next, you have to keep this dynamic in mind. The foundation isn't just cracking, it is actively sinking. The walls they built to keep the rest of the family out have locked them inside together, and neither of them seems to know how to escape the very trap they set for themselves. But that wasn't the whole story. What surfaced just a few weeks later would change the entire narrative. Just as fans thought the May 7th footage was the absolute peak of the drama, another date completely shattered expectations and brought a whole new layer of chaos to the timeline. We need to talk about June 26, 2026. Rumors suggest that a massive cash offer and a desperate start-over plan reached the airwaves, leaving audiences completely stunned. Think about where couples usually are when they start tossing around phrases like starting over. You do not start over when things are going well. You do not start over when there is a solid foundation. You hit the reset button when the original structure has completely burned to the ground. Reports claim that this cash offer was a last-ditch effort to rebrand their lives and secure their financial future. A desperate plea to wipe the slate clean and pretend the last decade of destruction never happened. Social media erupted with exclusive theories that this was not a romantic gesture, but a calculated business move to keep the cameras rolling. They were trying to manufacture a fresh storyline because the old one was actively tanking their public image. But you do not just have to read between the lines or rely on rumors to see the cracks forming. The proof is right there in the concrete details of their daily lives. If you pay close attention to how they operate now, you will see the exact moment the trap closed in on them. There is a glaring separation in how they present themselves to the world. We are seeing separate language, separate tones, and entirely separate plans. Listen to how Kody speaks in recent interviews. The pronoun we has almost completely vanished from his vocabulary. It has been replaced by I, me, and my. He talks about his house, his rules, and his future. It is a subtle linguistic shift, but it speaks volumes about where his head is at. They are no longer operating as a united front. They are functioning as two entirely separate entities, desperately trying to protect their own interests. Fans speculating on the current season have pointed out that Robyn's tone has shifted from a supportive, dutiful partner to someone who sounds perpetually exhausted and defensive. They are living under the same roof, but they are drawing battle lines in the sand, preparing for a war that neither of them actually wants to fight. To truly understand why this relationship is unraveling, you have to look directly at the architect of the chaos. This brings us to a massive behavioral flaw that has defined this family from the very beginning. Kody Brown has a deep underlying need for control, but more importantly, he has a psychological reliance on conflict. He thrives on chaos. For years, he operated by pitting people against each other, using the natural jealousy of plural marriage to keep himself at the absolute center of attention. He was the prize they were all fighting for, and he loved every single second of it. But now, the arena is entirely empty. There are no other wives to compete for his affection, no other households to escape to when things get tough. Without an adversary, his behavioral flaws are violently amplified. It has been said that he is creating conflict where there is none, because peace feels entirely foreign to him. He doesn't know how to exist in a quiet house. He is self-sabotaging his only remaining marriage because his ego simply does not know how to function without a constant state of dramatic tension. He is shadowboxing in the dark, fighting phantom enemies because he cannot handle the reality of his own reflection. In a desperate bid to win back public favor and distract from this internal collapse, they tried to sell a storyline that absolutely nobody was buying. This was their failed emotional appeal. They attempted to frame themselves as the tragic, misunderstood victims of a failed plural marriage experiment. They wanted the audience to look at them as the brave survivors who clung to each other, while the rest of the family cruelly abandoned them. But the audience sees right through the inauthenticity. It is a massive thematic hypocrisy. For years, they claimed that the difficulties of plural marriage were the only things holding them back from true happiness. They blamed the jealousy, the lack of time, and the emotional demands of the other wives for every single problem in their relationship. Yet, now that they have exactly what they always wanted, exclusive, uninterrupted monogamy, it is destroying them faster than plural marriage ever did. They orchestrated the environment that caused the other wives to leave, so playing the victim now falls completely flat. Rumors suggest that even the production team was struggling to edit this narrative into something believable because the contradiction was just too glaring. Yet, even with all of these massive red flags flying high, even with the separate language and the rumored cash grabs, there is a completely different way to read this entire situation. We have to look at the defense, the counter-read that explains away the chaos. What looks like a total, catastrophic collapse from the outside can actually be interpreted as an ordinary, albeit clumsy, adjustment period after a massive structural end. Think about the sheer psychological shock of what they have just been through. Going from a sprawling, chaotic family of over 20 people with multiple households, constant schedules, and endless noise, down to just 2 people in a massive, quiet house is a jarring transition. It is the ultimate empty nest syndrome, multiplied by 1,000. Of course they are struggling to find their footing. Of course they are using separate language as they try to figure out who they actually are as individuals outside of the plural family identity. Exclusive theories online have pointed out that this friction is exactly what happens when 2 people are finally forced to confront their own relationship without any distractions. The fighting isn't a sign of the end. It is simply the messy, uncomfortable process of rebuilding a foundation that was neglected for over a decade. When you look at it from this perspective, a very clean, logical verdict starts to emerge. Despite the public backlash, despite the awkward on-camera conversations, and despite the endless social media speculation, this marriage survives. It genuinely does. They are too financially intertwined, too emotionally codependent, and honestly, entirely too stubborn to ever let the public see them fail. Kody's pride could never handle the absolute humiliation of his final, chosen wife walking out the door. And Robyn, who spent years securing her position as the legal and primary spouse, is not going to abandon the empire she fought so hard to inherit, even if that empire is currently in ruins. They have weathered public hatred, family estrangement, and massive financial hits, and they are still standing next to each other. They will put their heads down, accept whatever reality television deals come their way, and quietly endure the reality they created. The storm is passing, the dust is settling, and the final chapter of the Brown family concludes with Kody and Robyn, together until the very end. The case is closed, the verdict is in, and it seems the fighting was just a necessary growing pain. But that wasn't the whole story. And just when you think you have this entirely figured out, just when you believe this marriage has safely crossed the finish line, everything gets flipped entirely upside down. Just when you think the dust has settled, there is one crucial, glaring factor that was entirely left out of that neat and tidy survival calculation, and it completely flips the whole thing. That false resolution we just walked through relies on one massive assumption, that Kody Brown actually wants to be a monogamous husband. It assumes that his ultimate goal was to settle down in a quiet house with one woman and live out his days in absolute peace. But if you look at the psychological makeup of this man, you quickly realize that peace is his greatest enemy. Kody's entire identity, his public brand, his spiritual framework, and his massive ego were entirely built on being the ultimate patriarch of a sprawling, chaotic plural family. For over a decade, his self-worth was directly measured by the number of women competing for his time and the number of children looking up to him. Without that structure, who is he? He is no longer the center of a complex universe. He is just a regular guy with a fractured family, a shrinking bank account, and a massive house that feels completely empty. The realization of this loss is the real turn in this story. The fight he is talking about isn't a fight to save his relationship with Robyn. It is a desperate, flailing fight to save his own identity. He is mourning the loss of the kingdom he destroyed, and Robyn is the only person left in the room to absorb all of that misplaced anger and profound disappointment. This brings us to the most crushing phase of their self-sabotage, which is the absolute isolation. This is the ultimate reality check for Robyn. For years, she played the complex game of plural marriage better than anyone else. She secured the legal marriage certificate, she secured the premium real estate, and she secured the majority of Kody's time and affection. She won the crown. But what happens when you win the crown and suddenly realize the entire kingdom has burned to the ground around you? She is now completely isolated, separated not just from the extended family network, but cut off from the public sympathy she once tried to cultivate. She is completely alone with a man who resents the very monogamy she supposedly wanted. Reports claim that the atmosphere in their home is incredibly heavy, defined by long silences and a lingering resentment that neither of them knows how to address. She wanted to be the savior of the family, the peacemaker who kept Kody grounded. But you cannot be a peacemaker when the war is already over and everyone else has gone home. The isolation is suffocating them, stripping away the glamorous illusion of their exclusive romance and leaving them with a cold, harsh reality. They are trapped in a double bind of their own making. They cannot admit they are miserable because it would prove the other wives were right to leave, but they cannot pretend to be happy because the exhaustion is written all over their faces. And right as this heavy, isolated reality sets in, a massive wildcard gets thrown into the mix. If you have been anywhere near social media or the reality television rumor mill lately, you already know what I am talking about. The new wife rumor. It is the most persistent, wildly circulating theory out there right now. Exclusive theories and blind items have been flooding the internet, suggesting that Kody is actively courting, or at least heavily considering, bringing a new, much younger sister wife into the family. The internet is buzzing with reports claiming that he sees this as the ultimate solution to all of his problems. A new wife would supposedly inject life back into the family, reboot the television show's original premise, fix the massive financial holes, and most importantly, stroke his completely bruised ego. But let's stop and look at this logically for a second. This rumor does not fit the current equation at all. It makes absolutely zero sense. First of all, the financial infrastructure to support a new wife simply does not exist anymore. Second, Kody's public reputation is in absolute tatters. What woman would voluntarily walk into a situation where she has to share a home with a deeply bonded, highly defensive couple holding on to the wreckage of 3 previous marriages? And most importantly, Robyn would never allow it. She spent years carefully dismantling the plural dynamic to secure her position. The idea that she would willingly open her door to a younger rival after finally getting Kody all to herself defies every single behavioral pattern she has ever shown. So why does this rumor keep spreading? If it makes absolutely no sense, why will it not die down? Because Kody desperately needs it to survive. Fans speculating on the psychology behind the leaks suggest that Kody is the one quietly feeding this narrative, or at least refusing to permanently shut it down because it serves a very specific purpose. It is a calculated distraction. As long as the public thinks he is still a prize, as long as people believe there is still a line of women waiting to marry him, his ego remains slightly intact. It is a phantom storyline designed to keep the audience guessing and to keep the network interested. But there is an even darker layer to this. By letting the new wife rumor breathe, he maintains a subtle, unspoken leverage over Robyn. It is a psychological reminder that he was once a man of many choices, keeping her slightly off balance and ensuring she remains in that anxious, compliant state where she feels she constantly has to earn his loyalty. It is the ultimate toxic behavioral flaw completely exposed. He cannot function without a triangle, so he is using a rumored, imaginary woman to create tension in a house that is otherwise completely silent. This brings us to the absolute point of no return. When you peel back all the layers, the desperate cash grabs, the separate language, the failed emotional appeals, and the phantom rumors, you are left with a staggering truth. They are not fighting for their marriage. They are fighting the marriage itself. They are fighting the terrifying realization that they finally got exactly what they asked for, and it is a complete nightmare. The structural collapse of this family was not an accident. It was a slow, methodical self-sabotage that took years to execute. They spent so much energy trying to outmaneuver the other wives, trying to manipulate the finances, and trying to control the narrative that they completely forgot to build anything real between just the two of them. Now, the cameras are still rolling, but the original script is gone. There is no one left to blame. There is no one left to hide behind. The hypocrisy has come full circle. They are standing at the absolute edge of a cliff, looking down at the reality of their own choices. Whether they sign divorce papers tomorrow or stay legally married for another 20 years out of pure stubbornness, the dynamic we are watching right now is the definitive end of the story they tried to sell us. They are trapped in a prison they built with their own hands, and the only thing left to do is serve the time. You locked in at 4 minutes. I'm asking you to lock in again, right now, with everything you just heard. Same question, second answer. 1 year from today, are they still legally married? And if your answer changed, say exactly what changed it. That is the part I actually want to read. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next deep dive.